Hey everybody, it's Dr. Harlan Kilstein here, and I have a very, very special guest for us today. Her name is Grace Bell. She is an expert at working with people in the area of their bodies, especially related to weight. Her methods are very different than anything you've ever seen. And that's probably because she's one of the top students of someone who I have known of for many, many years and come to tremendously admire. And that teacher's name is Byron Katie. So, Grace, what is it exactly that you do? And what is what we call the work of Byron Katie?
Yeah. Well, indeed, I do work with people, all kinds of presenting problems, especially in self-sabotage. But of course, that shows up in eating and weight. And that's where I experienced myself difficulty long ago. And we work on really what's happening in the mind, because you have to have stressful thinking and feelings to go off balance in, I don't know, these areas of life where that we calling, sabotaging oneself, kind of what is going on there that it looks like I'm doing something that isn't in my own best interest, or I feel collapsed or depressed or unhappy. So we just look at what's running in the mind, how the mindset is, or what's being believed there, and then question it. And the work itself is a method of doing that. That's super simple. It really, targets what's happening there and helps people find their own answers and see, oh, that's what I'm thinking and believing. I got it. And when you see it, you realize you don't really need to believe it, or you actually don't, you know. So I facilitate that with people.
Now, how did you get into working with people with body weight issues?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. So when I started facilitating the work after my training, I really worked with anything that anyone brought to me. Like, this is a problem in my life. And, the amount of problems can go on and on, right? All kinds of things. And I would mention from time to time, because I had so much, I don't know, like personal personal experience, and then finding my way through the forest of eating issues. I had an eating disorder in my 20s that started really late teens, and uh, it was such a huge effect on my life, my quality of life. It kind of changed the direction of everywhere I was going, where I thought I was going to go at that time. And I would mention from time to time some of the freedom that I feel now after, among other work, and then whatever was available to me way back then, and then also doing the work on these topics. And people would say, could you say more about that? Or could you tell me more about that? Or how was that? I mean, people that were requesting more, more work on eating and weight and body image. And even if they didn't say they have an eating disorder, they just have like an endless desire to lose 20 pounds that they're never losing. They really wanted to get how to be peaceful with that or more successful. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. I was a little like, oh, this topic is with me for my whole life. Now is the more of a healer side. But then when I started to work with people specifically on that, I really began to love it. And I could see how they would be able to question what they were looking at, how they were seeing things, and get out of that cycle, which is great.
What are some of the kinds of changes that you saw with people in helping them by doing the work?
Oh, yeah. Some were actual, like actual weight loss. we don't ever really have that as like this is my number one goal and I'm only focusing on that, it's like almost seeing what the emotional experiences of it and then addressing that. But people would finally relax and be able to lose weight more with more ease and not all that kind of tight-fisted approach. And also things like people do all kinds of things like wake up in the night and feel the need to eat, or every time they get home, they're fine during the day, but when they get home at night, there's a lot of eating that's happening, or compulsive behavior, or when they're at work and they're in the kitchen and there's leftovers at their job, they just can't stop eating them. And they would really look closely at what's going on in those moments in that cycle, and actually be able to see a way to rest with that and not respond, or just even almost become a different person that just sees that kind of thing that's happening, that happens in human nature totally differently, and just have it fall away. So, I mean, pretty wonderful. Yeah. Inspiring.
So, what kind of change did you notice in yourself?
Yeah. It was really interesting because I had done things that were available at the time. I hadn't heard of the work. In fact, I think like Byron Katie herself had this huge shift of consciousness and kind of awareness that happened in the 1980s. I think it was 1986, in her 40s. And so this is probably about the same time that I'm in the beginnings and middle of my disordered eating. And what was available at the time, there was people onto it. There was therapy and therapy groups and Overeaters Anonymous, and I did them all. Course in Miracles, and everything was you had a contribution to my journey, my healing journey there. So I was aware, as aware as I could be. And then when I went to Katie's school for the work, and you just do these 9 days of intensive doing the work, like you could say you're in a training, but really you're just doing the work. It's experiencing the work day in and day out. And there was a day when we were invited to do the work on our body. And I couldn't believe the concepts. There's a first step where you write down what it is that you're thinking and believing without editing. And I just couldn't believe how negative. And this was actually when I hadn't had for a long time more extreme episodes that you'd call disordered eating, but I still had anxiety around eating. And I always thought I should lose a little weight. I just always thought that. And I was so not shocked about what I was writing down and how I was seeing it. And I got the chance to really sit there and look at that negativity and violence really around how I was seeing the body, and then food itself, like even right there in the school. And I questioned it, and the questions start with, is it true? And I just found such insight. And I really feel like I had this humongous shift by sitting there in the work on that. And I continued later. And I felt like I understood what had been going on for the previous, all that pain when it came to food and eating was really sort of not necessarily around just food and eating. It was about the food, but it also wasn't. And then something from that point forward, I became more like naturally just eating. And that was it was just like wonderful. I felt like whatever I'd been looking for, I finally came to that. It was so it was so wonderful. I felt so excited about the whole thing. So yeah, it was really, really incredible. I mean, I was looking at lots of things at that school, because you look at, death and pain and the human condition and relationships. And I'd done that day after day. And this was maybe like the sixth day. You kind of come to the body. And so I was used to doing the work at that point, kind of getting it. And then, yeah, it was just incredible to me. Wow, the way I've seen the world is kind of how I've seen my body too. It's so stressful. And it was an amazing shift.
How can someone apply the work to any kind of eating issues?
Ah, it's a really good question, because I think there are different, people have their own experience, like there's some just overeating, at a regular meal, but then overing it. And then there's some like sort of secretive binge eating that they feel ashamed of. Some people have that experience. I've had all of them. Some people are really, really into restricting, kind of being very, very, very low on intake of food. And then that causes some imbalance for sure. And I think looking at each unique place, some people have very normal looking bodies. Some people have quite heavy bodies. In some ways, the body doesn't really necessarily, it reveals something, but it doesn't necessarily say everything about what's going on inside of somebody. So I think looking at, finding your unique areas where this kind of compulsive or emotional thing begins to happen is very, very useful. And we have all different kinds of exercises for that, but there are different kinds. I think of just like a kind of a overeater. Just somebody who just does it like that and has maybe a persistent weight issues. And then some people who've had weight and then lost a lot of weight. I have so many people that have come that have like lost 100 pounds, and then they go back all the way up again, and then they go all the way back down. So there's some like swinging experience. And in some ways, I think, and then some that are just so stressed, but they have very normal or maybe even extra thin bodies. We kind of know what that likes. That's often how we label eating disorders. But they're all experiencing pain, but it's a little bit, it's different for that unique person. So you just are looking closely at where it shows up and applying this inquiry to it to see what's going on in your mind, so that you can kind of just be more clear about it. And awareness is like a incredible medicine. Oh, that's what's happening. So, yeah.
So, how did you get to become a facilitator for people with weight loss issues using the work?
That is such a good question, because I was a facilitator just to start. Just anything, any presenting issue, whatever you want to do the work on. And I'd have like as I journeyed in my private practice, I started a 10-month program called Year of Inquiry. I think it's in year 14. This is coming up a year, the 14th round. And that is just a general, like everybody gathers and they come and we have live calls and questions, and it's kind of a training through experience in the work. And that was underway. And then I had those questions that I mentioned, like people saying, did you say that you had eating issues? Because I've got those. Or I'd like to know how what happened in your mind, or like what went on. And I'd write about it sometimes. And people on my newsletter, I'd kind of share that, and they'd say, oh my gosh, like, so, just to see where to focus or which direction to move. And as that I just had more, I sort of let people showed me, like, how did I get to be? It kind of happened very organically because people wanted it so much. It was really interesting. I remember somebody coming to say, and that, so then I had I'll finish that in a minute, but then I had this, I decided to have a class called Too Much, Not Enough that was 8 weeks long. And I had all these people that signed up for it, and super fun to teach. And then of course you get feedback, and then it kind of improves and changes. And I had another round of it. And then I decided to have an in-person retreat. And the first time I ever did it, I think there was 3 people there, and but they were my beta testers, and we did like an in-person retreat. And then that retreat eventually over time became a 7-day eating peace retreat, where we do a lot with food and eating and stress and emotions. So it just developed, and a lot of people suffer from this. And what I was going to say before is, once that got underway, then people started contacting me about other compulsions. They said, like, well, can I take your eating peace course, but actually I'm a smoker and I want to quit smoking? I'm like, you probably could. There will be some things that where the details don't necessarily apply, but at the baseline, it's the same thing. There's like this pull, the self-sabotage kind of pull. And so that was kind of fun, because then they would find healing around that. And anyway, it just sort of continued from there. So I got really, really interested in taking lots of, I actually have a master's degree in applied behavioral science. And I was a therapist initially. And then I started doing the work with people after I did the work training. And, but what's wonderful about being a credentialed therapist is that you need to take, extra credits all the time and get trainings. And so I would do trainings in addiction just to learn, what are they saying? What's going on there? What's happening? And then how do I kind of bring the work into whatever might be useful there? So it's been a journey, and I've really loved it. It makes sense that I would kind of wind up being an addiction expert in a way because of my own history, because that felt like I was a real, that period of time was so painful in my 20s.
What is your own personal story about food and eating?
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like probably I started having some of the ideas that many people believe when I was pretty young about the importance of being healthy and thin. Nothing wrong with that. But I started, seeing, wow, it isn't just important, it's like critical. And, those jokes about, like, you can't be too thin or too rich, those kind of things. And I just saw that happening in my family and peers as teenagers. A lot of people kind of begin to see those things starting bubbling when they're teens. And I think I went on my first diet when I was 14. And that just started sort of a diet binge cycle, and, kind of a restriction, overdoing it. And it got bigger and bigger for the whole years, all of high school. And then I have a family that really was, revered higher education. My dad was a professor. And so going off to college was like really exactly what you do next. And it was really funny when I left home and went to college as a freshman, it got horrible, so that I didn't even know the word bulimia or anorexia at the time. But I think I had both characters definitely inside, like, just a binge eater and then total restriction over here as a way to crack down on it. Very imbalanced, seesawing. And I dropped out of college because I was just so in the throes of it within 6 months. So I was in the prestigious little liberal arts college, and I just got on an airplane and came home. And then they were like, oh no. So family therapy, and I struggled with it for a decade. Felt horrible. Not what my life plan had been. That's for sure.
Who are the people who come and apply this work to their eating?
Yeah. People who come to me, I find, usually have done a bit of work, like in emotional life or studying the mind in some way, or they might have just a little inkling that whatever they're doing that looks like confusing behavior with food is something within. And I just have had so many people, it's really interesting, that have, like, they've been to therapy, they've I don't know, like done EST or Landmark, or they've done lots of personal growth programs, they've been to meditation retreats, they've done yoga, they do lots of self-improvement things, and those are great. I mean, there can be wonderful things within, but they're usually really trying to drill down into sort of a source or origin. They just even have an inkling of that. They might not know what it is, but they get, like, there's this term that's been out there for a long time called emotional eating. And so they're aware this seems to have something to do with my emotions. And so, yeah, so often people have some experience, but they really are all ages and gender and all walks of life, all over the place. But often they just do, I'd say, they have some kind of awareness or interest in this being a mind, mental or thought problem, if you will, and they want to take a look.
So, what kinds of transformation are possible through the work or self-inquiry?
Well, I mean, massive transformations are possible. I like going in without that agenda or expectation, because it's just sort of, we'll see, because it's very good to have, like, just an open perspective, like to kind of relax with wherever it is we're going. But I mean, Byron Katie herself, on the extreme end of the kind of bell curve, that's like a massive transformation, kind of hugely all at once. And people like Eckhart Tolle or somebody also have had that very extreme, what it was like before and what it was like after, like recognizing or seeing something differently. I find more of us fit into sort of the middle of the bell curve. And there's little incremental micro changes throughout a day. And especially when you're able to practice kind of like maybe if you had a meditation practice, or a quiet time practice, you just do a little every day, and things begin to shift, and I find that they really shift in a natural way. It's a little bit like somewhat of a spiritual process. So everyone's got their own timeline, but the transformations are pretty incredible. I mean, I find it myself just with relationships, and my mind doesn't seem to go to catastrophic, very dramatic thinking anymore. Or if it does, I just know that it's showing me something that isn't true, it isn't real, because it's just something imagined in the future, which is such a relief. So people can become like almost like where they feel like a different person. At least I do. I sure do. And yeah, so isn't that sometimes what we want? Or also, I mean, having said that, the paradox of also feeling more comfortable and at home with who you actually are already, like sort of getting all the mucky stuff out of the way and coming back to something in the center that maybe has been here the whole time. So kind of uncovering something about who we are, which is a bit of a mystery, and that's okay.
I guess since so few people are actually familiar with the work of Byron Katie,
Sure.
what would be an example of actually doing the work on a stressful belief, let's say connected to weight loss?
Oh, okay. So great question. What is a thought, a concept, perhaps that you've heard people say or write about or express in your groups? Like that
Well,
that sounds like a
funny
stuff.
you should ask. I actually wrote up a list that I talked about last night
Oh,
of
great.
of beliefs. So I'm going to go through them and
Yes.
you pick the one.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay. Number one is I need to weigh myself to know if I'm losing weight.
Ah,
Number
interesting.
number
Yep.
two, my body should lose belly fat first.
Got it.
Number three, medications should not interfere with my weight loss.
Yeah.
Number four, this is the biggie. I shouldn't have to exercise to lose weight. Eating correctly should be enough. Number five, sleep should have nothing to do with weight loss. Number six, whether I am stressed or not should have nothing to do with weight loss. And my own favorite is all this talk about a positive mindset is completely irrelevant to weight loss. If I follow the diet, I should lose weight.
Yes. Well, there's a little wisdom in absolutely all of it. I mean, just a little comment before we'll do the work, but about that positive mindset. Like sometimes people think that what doing the work of Byron Katie or investigating your thoughts or changing your thoughts is about quickly finding the positive thought. And that's not really what it is. It's seeing what's been so for you, even in an unconscious way, like what's running there and looking and kind of having an acceptance or seeing that it makes sense that it would be doing that. And it's not your fault. It's just what minds do. They kind of they make these decisions and run a program in the background that's faulty. And if you had a faulty program running in a computer, you can go like, hey, let's smack this thing and say, just get positive over there. Really, you go in and you address, the virus that's running, and you take a look at it and kind of clean it up. It just seems like that just seems to be necessary, because then often there can be these thoughts of like, I shouldn't be thinking negatively, and it becomes a new rule. But I get there's the wisdom in that concept for sure. Because it still looks like when you investigate or see or relax around your mind and what it's thinking, you wind up looking more positive for sure. But so I like that one. You said there was a biggie. I shouldn't have to. It was a shouldn't have to. What was that one? It was number 4.
I shouldn't have to exercise to lose weight. Eating should be enough.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, what I like about that one is the shouldn't have to. And you can fill in the blank. And this would fit with some of the other ones. I shouldn't have to do that. Sleep shouldn't affect this. Stress shouldn't affect it. I shouldn't have to do this thing. So we just notice the assumption that there's things that have to happen. Have to. I like identifying that the way that mind, that thing that comes in, I see it too in my own head. Have to. That has to happen to be successful. That has to happen to make it work. So identifying that one, I like it, that simple concept. I shouldn't have to, in this case, exercise to lose weight. You see, I have to exercise to lose weight. And then it's saying I shouldn't. Okay. But first, let's just look at that baseline. I have to exercise to lose weight. And I don't like that. So I have to, anyone can follow this and fill in the blank. I have to. Da, 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 da. First question is it true? And your mind might go, of course it is. I've thought this for years. I learned about it long ago. It keeps looking true. Okay, so good. All right. I love that there's a second time that you get to sit with it. It's the only time it's really a repeated question, or kind of hey, hang on, let's just really spend a little more time there. Second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? Beyond of a shadow of doubt, for all time, for every person, for you, it's the most important person, which is okay. I have to exercise. Like the only people that ever lose weight, they exercise. Can you absolutely know that that's true? And it's just, the only people who ever lose weight, they sleep really well. The only people who ever lose weight, they follow the food plan strictly. You just see your assumptions in there. Can you absolutely know that that's true? I mean, where my mind is going is no, because I've heard, I don't know, there's exceptions to all of it. And there's all these suggestions that make a lot of sense, and they're good ones. And we don't really know, like you have to eat this certain way, not that certain way. And no, so I have to. So the third question is, how do you react, and what happens when you're thinking this thought? How do you react to the thought? I have to exercise to lose weight. I mean, you probably have images of exercising and that you don't like it, or what it takes. You see other people exercising and pictures of them working so hard, or, like just and the time that it takes, or I don't know, there's lots of different ideas about what exercising looks like and what it should look like. And then there's oh, that doesn't fit for me, or I don't like that. That sounds bad. I have to exercise to lose weight. And you spend a little time there when we do the work. Like, how else do you react? What are your emotions? And how do you feel about exercise when you think, I have to do it to lose weight? There might be this rebel that's in there going, no, you don't. I don't like it when people tell me I have to do something. And the fourth question, which is sort of the transformational question, although you can recognize things in any of these questions, actually. But the fourth question is, who would you be if you didn't have this thought? Like, who are you just in this moment, in this situation called losing weight, interested in losing weight, without the belief I have to exercise to achieve that? Exercise is required. Who would I be if I didn't even have that thought? I mean, I love just seeing what if it could be done a different way that worked for me? What if I have concepts about this word called exercise that are really too extreme for me? I have pictures of people, I don't know, running marathons or being in the gym an hour every single day, and that doesn't really work for me. Like where my mind goes even on this one is most humans, like, when you're children and you're just innocently a child without thoughts, you like to run around, you like to go outside, you like to walk, and you're not doing it to burn calories or lose weight. It's just we're moving beings. So who would I be without the thought I have to exercise to achieve this thing? Very interesting place. And sometimes people will think, oh, but I have to have that stressful thought. I have to have that thought, or else I'll never exercise. And that's a good one to even question in itself. Like, are we sure? Because we don't know what you're going to do tomorrow. I mean, have you ever exercised and enjoyed it? Have you ever moved and noticed that you liked it? People like that with dancing, for example. All right, taking a walk, moving about. People like moving about. So the last part of the work, so those are the 4 questions, and you can journal or spend some time or sit with those. Really interesting to explore. And then the last part of the work is finding turnarounds. And often there are 3, and sometimes there are only 2. And this is the most tricky part for most people who are beginners, because it's like, wait, how do I turn this thing around? And what do you mean? But the easiest way to think about it is first just finding the complete opposite. So I have to exercise to lose weight, and I shouldn't have to. I don't have to exercise to lose weight. I actually don't have to. Could that be true? I mean, are there any examples anywhere in this world where somebody's losing weight without exercising, or even or whatever they're calling exercise, maybe the exercise that I think is required? So that's a great thing to ponder, and just see. And they have to be really genuine, like you're not making it up. Well, that sounds positive and good, but I don't really believe it. You have to really feel inside like it's a true example. I'm trying to think to see if I actually have one for that particular concept. Like, I don't have to exercise to lose weight. Or, yeah, I'd say, I mean, this is the funny thing that came to my mind. I don't know if it would come to somebody else's mind, but I had this image of monks who live in monasteries and who are very, very peaceful and very much in their right size body, and just do things kind of extremely moderately, put it that way, and are exploring mind and inner peace. And that's their whole interest, their greatest interest in life. And they are not in gyms, and they are not outside training. And they might do some yoga for the fun of it. As I understand, yoga was invented to help monks, stay on track and like just loosen up their body. They might like to walk. You just notice most of us don't want to lay in bed all day. It's just not a natural human interest. So I don't have to exercise to lose weight. And I mean, that might feel, for the person who would believe that, it might feel sort of more freeing too. Like, what do I like? You can, so there's some wisdom in that belief I shouldn't have to. If you turn that part around, it'd be, I should. And you can just see how that might fit into your own personal day-to-day life. Maybe there's a way to make exercise just the tiniest bit, making little shifts where this thing called exercise is something I like and is interesting to me. I remember, doing that same thing myself, thinking of it as like just a must. You just have to train. And of course, there's an appeal to doing something strong with the body, but it was kind of grueling and torturous and not that fun. And I remember having that idea, like, wow, what do I like to do? I like to dance. That's why I mentioned dancing. I like dancing, and I like just taking a beautiful walk somewhere without any time limit on it or push it's just noticing the movement. You could maybe change the word from exercise to movement and notice that is something that we're all drawn to, that we like. So anyway, I don't have to is an interesting place. And that's even a relief with the one who, like the sleep one, I don't have to sleep well. Not yet. I mean, let's just see what happens, and notice that I can be awake no matter how I slept last night. I can still function, and I'm working on it. It's something that's in process, but I don't absolutely have to, because have just as much of a right to be here with as a human being with some sleep issues as anyone else. So I don't know if that helps, but to see that and recognize it, and just that's a mind coming up with its very polar opposite ideas all the time and like final answers, but that it really is very open. It's just the mind doing what minds tend to do. They're just like throwing out thoughts and suggestions, but we don't have to believe all of them. Yeah.
So, thank you for that.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Grace, how do people work with you?
Well, I have a calendar where people schedule solo sessions, and like people in my kind of work, some people come every week in the same day, and some people just come in for tune-ups a little bit and then come back. Or and I also, my favorite is, or it's different. I love working with people one-on-one, and sometimes that's a wonderful place because people feel very private about what they're doing. That's okay. It makes sense. But I love working in groups, because often people find that what they're trying to keep private and they have felt ashamed about is actually a very shared way of seeing things, and they're not alone at all. So in a group, you can sometimes, like, you don't have to be the person in the hot seat doing the work. You can listen to somebody else do the work, and then people, chime in and talk about their takeaways and what they get. So there's so much richness that can be found when people gather together regularly in a group. That's one of my favorites, is that a class or year of inquiry group that get to know each other well and get to facilitate each other. And like, oh, that person, I like that person over there. And they seem, and then people will outside of the class or the group that's running, they'll start learning how to trade facilitation with each other so they can just do it on their own. Yeah, that's how they work with me. And I'm always offering something new and shorter for people to get a little taste, which is great when we're talking about eating topics. A little taste of it.
So your website is Work with Grace. And
Yes.
if people go there and they can get on your list, I understand that you have a 90-minute mini workshop that
Yes.
you give them.
Yes. I am going to do that live, and then it'll probably be available by recording, but I'm going to do it live on July 9th at 2 different times. So I'm in Pacific time. I know you're in Eastern time, Harlan. But people come from Europe and other time zones, and Australia too, speaking English, wherever people speak English. So I'm going to do it twice that day, and then it'll be available for a while via recording, so people can just get the chance to be in that mini workshop and take it. And some people get a lot out of even watching the recording, because you can follow along and do your own work. But there'll be a link to sign up for that, and then you'll get on the Grace Notes list, as it's called, and you just get, you get updated on whatever's happening next.
And you'll see that link right underneath this video as soon as we get it posted for you.
Oh, yay. That's awesome.
So if you learned something today, or if you're curious and you would like to learn more, maybe a taste, maybe a deep dive. It's up to you. Grace, you've been working with people on eating issues for how many years?
Yeah, since I really started diving deeply into it in about 2007. So how long is that? Maybe 15 or 16 years on eating, and a little longer even on just doing the work. But yeah, lots of
Explore
experience.
the site, workwithgrace.com, and I absolutely guarantee you that you will learn something new that has relevance and importance just for you. That website again is workwithgrace.com. You'll see the link right below this video. Grace,
Ah,
thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And I hope that the pebbles that you kicked today create a lot of ripples and change people's lives.
oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. It was wonderful to have this conversation. Appreciate it, Harlan.